You know that feeling when you're talking to an AI, even a really smart one, and it just feels a little behind the times? Like it knows a ton, but it has no idea what happened yesterday? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on the tech that's fixing that exact problem. It's called Retrieval-Augmented Generation, or RAG for short.
So how are we going to break this down? First, we're going to look at what's wrong with today's AI, this thing we're calling the frozen brain problem. Then we'll introduce the solution, RAG, which is kind of like a knowledge lifeline. After that, we'll pop the hood and see how it actually works, step by step. We'll also see how it keeps its information from getting stale, and finally, we'll talk about why this is such a huge deal.
All right, let's dive right in. To really get why RAG is such a game changer, you first have to understand the problem it's built to solve. And honestly, it all comes down to a really simple question.
I mean, you've been there, right? You asked this incredibly powerful large language model about something that just happened, a new story, a product launch, maybe even a new company policy, and you get nothing, a total blank stare. So why does that happen?
Well, the thing is, most LLMs work with what you can call frozen knowledge. Just imagine a brilliant professor who's read every single book ever written, but then completely stopped rating anything new back in 2021. Their knowledge is massive for sure, but it's also static. It's completely sealed off from the real world, where new information is being created every single second.
So if the AI's brain is stuck in the past, how do we connect it to what's happening right now? Well, that's exactly where RAG comes into play. It acts as this essential knowledge lifeline.
In a nutshell, RAG gives the LLM a brand new superpower, the ability to do real-time research. So before it even thinks about answering your question, it goes out and pulls in fresh, relevant info from other places. It's no longer trapped by its old training data.
And this comparison just lays it all out perfectly. On one side, you've got your standard LLM, stuck with its frozen, outdated knowledge. But then you bring in RAG, and suddenly it has access to live data. That one simple change completely transforms its answers from being potentially stale guesses to being rich, accurate, and grounded in what's true today.
Probably the easiest way to think about it is like this. RAG is a super fast, incredibly smart personal research assistant for the AI. So before the AI says a word, this little assistant sprints over to the library, finds the exact articles and documents it needs, and hands them over, saying, here's everything you need to know to give a perfect answer.
Okay, so we get the what. We know it's a research assistant, but how does this whole process actually work? What are the mechanics behind it? Let's get into the nitty-gritty.
From a bird's eye view, it's a pretty simple 5-step process. You ask a question, the system goes and finds relevant info. It then combines that info with your original question and hands that whole package over to the LLM. The LLM then spits out a smart, informed answer. Simple, right? Now let's zoom in on those middle steps because that's where the magic happens.
It all begins with the data. The system has to take all of its external knowledge, documents, databases, websites, and translate it into the AI's native language. And that language is math. This process is called embedding, and it turns every piece of information into a long list of numbers called a vector. You can think of it like a unique digital fingerprint for every single concept.
So where do all these digital fingerprints get stored? They live in a special kind of library called a vector database. And this isn't just storage, it's a highly organized, super fast, searchable knowledge library. It's basically the AI's external brain.
Okay, theory is one thing, but let's make this crystal clear with a real-world example. Let's say you go to your company's HR chatbot, and you ask it a pretty common question. How much annual leave do I have? Instantly, the RAG system takes your question and turns it into a vector too. Then it goes to that vector database and looks for other vectors, other concepts that are mathematically closest to it. This is called a similarity search. And here's the key. It's not looking for keywords. It's looking for meaning.
And here's what that search looks like. The system can see mathematically that the concepts in the leave policy and your leave records are super similar to your question. At the same time, it sees that the office cafeteria menu is conceptually on another planet. It's correctly identified as totally irrelevant, so it just gets ignored.
Now this is the augmented part of Retrieval-Augmented Generation. The system takes the relevant stuff it just found, the text from the company policy and your personal records, and literally staples it to your original question. This creates a new, supercharged, context-rich prompt to send to the LLM.
So, instead of the LLM just getting a vague question like, how much annual leave do I have? It gets your question plus all the evidence, the company rules, your specific data, and with all that context, it can generate a perfect, precise answer instead of just a generic guess.
This all sounds fantastic, right? But we all know the real world doesn't sit still. Information changes constantly. So how does the system make sure its own knowledge doesn't get stale?
Exactly. That shiny vector database is only as good as the information inside it. So what happens a month from now when HR updates the official leave policy?
Well, this is where a truly smart system shines. A good RAG setup is always watching its sources. The moment that HR policy document gets updated, an automated process kicks in. It rereads the new document, creates a fresh vector, a new digital fingerprint, and replaces the old one in the database. This makes sure that the AI's research assistant is never working from old notes.
Okay, so we've gone through the problem, the solution, and even how it works under the hood. So let's just zoom out for a second and focus on the big question. Why is this such a big deal?
When you boil it all down, it comes down to these three massive advantages. Because the LLM is getting fed the right information at the right time, its answers become fundamentally better. They are accurate because they're based on facts, they are current because the facts are up to date, and they are contextually rich because they understand your specific situation.
Look, if there's one single thing to take away from all of this, it's this. RAG is the bridge. It's the technology that connects the incredible reasoning power of a large language model to the messy, dynamic, constantly changing world of real information. It unfreezes the AI's brain.
And that leaves us with a pretty fascinating thought to end on. For years, we've had to work around what our AI doesn't know. But as RAG becomes the standard, that limitation is just disappearing. It really makes you wonder, what kind of new, bigger, more amazing questions are we going to start asking when our AI can finally know anything?